Hello, and welcome back to Toledo Aquaponics. This is my day 38 update, and everything's going along really well. I really haven't had any real negatives. The water level still staying high, which is probably where it needs to stay, honestly. I'll probably kind of start making notes and kind of try to dial it in a little bit. And that way it does. My water is very green. The green is from the iron I added. I dosed the system with another about 11 grams of iron. So the water went funny colors on me, but that happens when you add iron. I added iron chelate into the system, about 11 grams of it. Right now I'm sitting at about 1 part per million. And I added this probably around 5 o'clock, and it's about, I think 10 o'clock now, give or take a little bit. So that's kind of my update for this. It is green. My fish are, there you go, there's a decent view of them. They're doing real well. They're really happy. They'll tolerate the iron without any problem. But these guys are nice and big. I don't have any, as far as I can tell, in my other system, other than the fact that my water is green, so it makes it slightly harder for me to see my fishies. As far as the rest of the stuff, I still have a few moths and stuff I like to hang around. Everything else seems to be going pretty well. The plants seem to like the lighting change a little bit more. These guys, which already were under the LED lights, are doing happily. However, my pea plant here is still got some nutrient deficiencies. Which is one of the reasons I'm trying to focus on the iron. The other thing I'm going to start doing is seeing if I can like pull this light this way or something, so that way it's getting hit with light, because right now towards the top it's basically getting shadowed. So I'm going to see if I can do something like this to kind of give it a decent spread. But I'm going to play around with that today. But that's kind of my update for my system. Everything's going along nicely. I'll definitely have less algae in the grow beds with rotating the nozzles as low down as I can. I do still clearly have algae, but much less than what I was dealing with. So T5 light is probably plenty of light, because even with that I have algae growing on my fish net from here. That green is not from the iron, that's actually from the fish net as far as I can tell. From probably algae growing on it, just under these T5 lights. So this should be plenty of light. I do get a lot of bugs in my system, so I will probably try to do something about putting a bug light or something there. But my fishies eat a lot of the small bugs. It's kind of hard to see. But right now I have a couple fishies that are stalking some of the gnats and things that are under the system. But this is working out really well. So I'm happy with the move. I'm going to be putting a call in tomorrow to get another IBC tank. Well, to get a IBC tank in. And hopefully I'll get actually a couple of them. I might be able to convince my wife to let me have an outdoor system. I don't know. We'll try that. But as far as the hydroponic systems, these guys are going along gangbusters. These guys are doing really well. This one right here is Black Simpson lettuce. It grows really big really quickly. Everything else is growing pretty decently. This is Butter Crunch. It's a little bit slow pickup, but it's starting to pick up pretty decently. This guy's about ready to harvest some of him. And then the secondary system, this is actually working out a lot better. So I made a few changes between the other system and this one. One, I changed how I'm running the line. So I have this line here. It's actually wrapped around each one instead of using zip ties. And that gives me a really nice close link together. And all of these rock wool are staying soaked. They're not quite soaked, but they're staying moist and saturated. So I'm going to kind of watch them for a little while, but I'm going to basically not touch the system for about a week and come back and check in on it and make sure everything's working. The other thing I did was I took some of this irrigation line, this little 1/2-inch irrigation line that I have, and ran it through some of this rope, which I'll show in a later video. So I took this rope, doubled it over, put the irrigation line over it, so that way this little 1/4-inch line here is actually running in on there, so it's running completely parallel with the water, so that way the water kind of runs through everything and it kind of snakes along the wicking line. The other thing is these plants were also a little bit better off than the other system. Most of these had roots coming down the bottom. So I'm going to kind of watch these guys and see how they're doing. But so far they're doing really well. The kale's the only thing that grows kind of funny, but I'm not too worried about it right now. But the dogs seem to leave it alone, especially with me turning it slightly. So that way I turn the top one, so that way these guys are at a little bit better of an angle. And they're a little bit more south facing. And we'll see how they do. We'll see how much light they get, kind of how everything else goes. The other difference in the system compared to the other one is I have an air line. So I have this air pump here that's just kind of chilling on the floor, is actually hooked in, and it's running an air line all the way out, along with the power line for the sump pump, which is pumping everything. Now unfortunately this is using a 43 watt pump. It's using an Aquaponics 550 just because it's pumping water up 5 feet. Honestly, you could probably get with something, probably a 250, like an Aquaponics 250 or something, you might be able to pull off, but I only have like 160s and 550s here, so I will probably try buying a 250 in the future and seeing if I can get it to pump water up to that, because it doesn't really need to be that high of a flow rate. It just needs to have a flow rate. So as long as it's anything over a drip, honestly, the system would be fine. But that's kind of my update for today. I know it went a little bit long. You can see the grow light for my basement is nice and purple, so I need to kind of deal with that later, as well as I have a little propagator in the window over here, and you can kind of see those. I'm going to get some like Mylar, like a space blanket material, to kind of help keep that up, to kind of reflect some of that light and take that down. But I think this is going to be my new water level. Originally I was liking the green line, but this is a little bit higher, so I might be able to set this. And then I'm also thinking about putting a top off in my sump tank instead. Typically you want the top offs in the sump. My biggest worry is with how much my sump fluctuates, I could end up with some water issues. So I'm going to let the system run for like about a week or so like this, and top it off a little bit sparingly. But I'm going to record how much I top it off, so I'll probably add like a 5-gallon bucket at the end of the week kind of thing, or maybe a gallon each day, or I'm not quite sure how I want to do it. But I'm just making note of the water level and everything else and seeing where everything sits. And I'm going from there. The other thing I tried is I bought Active Aqua makes a sump pump adapter for their submersible pumps. So it's basically a 90-degree adapter that you can plug into that you can hook into their pumps for the intake to turn them into an actual sump pump. So that way it basically sucks water from as low as like 3/16 from the bottom of whatever it's in. So I ordered one of those, and I'm going to play around with that for an Active Aqua to kind of just kind of mess with. And I'm not sure how well that'll work, but I'm going to kind of just screw around with it a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is, like I said, if I can, I don't know if she'll go with it, but I might put an outdoor, just like a chop system, just a simple IBC. Especially if I get a couple of IBCs, I'll probably create a small little chop system and play around with a couple different flow mechanics. I'm very happy with this system here, but split flow would be nice too, and that was one of the things I was originally actually looking at doing here, as well as there's also bypass flow. And I'll cover both of those in a video later, kind of going over like what each one of those are and the differences. Bypass flow is nice because you can use some of the bypassed water to aerate your water and everything else. And there are people that honestly do that and don't actually run an air pump or anything of any sort. I still recommend it because you can put an air stone on the bottom to kind of keep solids off the bottom of the tank and help them keep them in the water and get them circulating, so you can actually clean them out and get them out and get them into the grow beds where they can be broken down. And they work out pretty well. So I'm going to kind of play around with that a little bit. These little air pumps here are like 3 watts. Like this guy here, I think is it's Active Aqua, it's a dual diaphragm, it's got 2 outlets. I think it's like 3 watts. So like you could take one of these, shove it in there, and it's going to cost you a couple cents. Altogether, for like an outdoor system, and that's one of the biggest issues with the indoor system. An outdoor system, if you can grow outdoors, do it. An outdoor system would cost me, to run my pump for the year, would cost me like $160. I would get more than that for, well, actually my pump would be less than that, but one of the other pumps that I was actually looking at originally would have cost me about $160 to run it for a year. It's a little bit more than that, depending on the electricity costs and everything in your area. But in my area, for the bigger pump that I was looking at, it's really not going to cost me that much. Even my pump now, the Active Aqua 550, is a 43 watt pump. Figuring it out at like 50 watts, it costs me pennies. And it costs me a couple bucks a month to run the pump all the time, 24/7. So I could run a DWC or flood and drain or something else really easily. And that's all it would take. And I wouldn't have my lighting costs. These lights here are 170 watts, so we'll call them 180. We'll round up each. So let's do the math on that. You're talking, I got 100 watts, give or take, between the pump, actually I have 200 watts, between the pump, my UV clarifier, my air pumps, and any sort of like little supplemental lighting. We'll just call it 200 watts for that little there, or whatever, for that little CFL bulb. And then I have another, basically 800 watts in just my lighting. That 800 watts, it's a kilowatt. So that's roughly 50 bucks a month to run this system year round. Now, if I can generate more than that getting out of the system, that's 50 bucks a month, I could really make some serious money, but I would be able to at least break even. As long as I can get about 50 bucks a month out of produce from my system, it'd be good. And I can do that with some of my stuff, like some of my lettuce and some of my chives and herbs and other things. I could probably do that, especially if I look at microgreens and look at adding on and expanding the system, and kind of like doing some of the other stuff I want to do. I could utilize my lights a little bit better, and kind of give me a little bit more surface area, and not necessarily get things growing at the optimal conditions, but give myself a little bit better head start on everything, and really get this system going. Really get it running. And I could generate easily 50 bucks. And granted, it would just be to supplement my own personal food kind of thing, which is part of what I'm looking for. I'm looking to kind of supplement some of the costs of my own food, as well as I'm doing this obviously for a project and a few other things. But I want to eventually, my goal, I probably won't be able to do it at this house, but I eventually want to be able to go completely sustainable. This system obviously will not do it, even once I get the IBC tank in here and I add on a bunch of grow beds, I won't be able to make it completely sustainable. I could easily do a meal a day. One meal a day out of my system, so I could basically take my entire lunch cost for a month and make it go away. And that to me would be useful, because even if you were being on a nice tight budget and say you're doing $5 a day for your food, that's $25 a week, that's $100 a month that you're spending on lunch. And if I can do one meal a day out of my system, even if it's just something simple like a garden salad or something like that, if I can do just that out of my system, one meal a day for a month, that more than justifies the $50 cost to be able to run this system, because I'm saving that $50. I'm literally saving $50. I'm cutting my costs in half just by providing one meal a day out of this system. Now, is this system going to do it? Probably not on its own. When I add on, my plan eventually is to look at how clean the water is running through here, and if I can, run either DWC or an NFT system. Maybe even take something like my little NFT towers that I have here and build a couple to add on to this system. I was originally thinking, one of the things I was looking at was along my back wall here is build an NFT wall. And that way I can angle my lights a little bit to hit the lights with those. And it still wouldn't be perfect, but I could potentially get a lot of really good growth and get at least a couple salads running. And even, like I said, one meal a day, that's all I want. One salad a day. And I honestly could probably do that. Let's see here, let's do the math. Let's say I can probably grow 8 or probably 10 lettuces per bed. So 10, 20, 30, 40 that's 40 salads technically that I could grow in here. If I set them up to rotate right, I could grow a month's worth of salad out of this system. As long as I can get my growth rates there, As long as my turnover is about a month, which right now that's been running for less than a month. So that salad at that growth rate out of a hydroponic system's running less than a month, and that's just all that is the cost of one active aqua 550 to run. So that's for a couple cents a day plus the cost of nutrients, which honestly is not that much. That's a salad right there, at least. That's my one meal. So I could easily expand that out of the system and with hydroponics and do it. So I want to try to do it with the aquaponics. Now the reason I'm doing the media beds is I want to be able to have a nice variety of what I grow. And that way I want to be able to grow pea plants. I want to be able to potentially maybe grow tomatoes and a few other things and kind of have some fun with it. But I do plan on adding on DWC as deep water culture systems as well as MFT systems into this. Because right now, even with the fish that I have here, even with the system in its current setup, with these two 55-gallon barrels and that, I have a lot more fish tank. I have a lot more waste producing in the system that I can use up right now. Now granted, right now I'm just growing lettuces and I don't have a really balanced micronutrients and things like that to deal with yet. The system will take, a couple months before it's really getting to that point. So I'm not going to have a ton of those little nutrients and things. But once the system gets there, I will be able to do, these lettuces here should be growing as quickly as they do in hydroponics. It'll be pretty damn close. So that's part of what I want to watch. That's the other reason I have the overwinter system and I have that set up downstairs, is I want to look at those lettuces and watch them go and see, with using hydroponic nutrients and an air drip irrigation system, can I run that that way and actually grow full size lettuce down there under artificial light, because that light there costs as much as two of these lights here. Yeah, I think it's about the cost of two of these lights in terms of power use. But theoretically, it should also have a better spectrum to be able to grow. And so that's kind of what I'm watching. I'm going to use my LED. My goal is to go completely LED, because the power efficiency wise, if I can cut my costs that much, I can grow a lot more. And that's what I want to go for. So these guys right now are what I'm running. These are my UFO 80s. And I'm going to kind of see if I can make them viable. The other thing I can do is I want to see how much light, if I take one of these and do this and hit the back wall, I want to see how much light am I putting on that back wall. Because if I do this, I'm still getting quite a bit of light to even this plant here. Like if you look, I move the light, you don't really see the light intensity move a whole lot on this plant. So going something like this, that could give me a couple feet of vertical growing room. It might only be like 3 or 4 feet, but that could give me 3 or 4 feet of vertical growing room there that I could hit for the cost of this same light. So I could hit all these guys up and a vertical growing area. So that's part of what I want to play with. I want to see if I can kind of mix and match and add on some vertical growing and add in some other stuff. That's one of the reasons I'm running these pea plants here, is I wanted to see if I can get this to kind of run just the right way, that they get all the light they need, and I'm still able to keep the system running and keep light to everything else down on these grow beds. Because if I can do that, if I can angle these lights, and I won't get as much light on that back wall, but I get some, I might be able to really make this work. So that's kind of my goal. That's kind of the future for some of the testing and stuff I want to do. Again, this is my day 38 update, 37, 38 update. I did dose the system with iron. It does have potassium and calcium in it due to the calcium and potassium carbonate that I use to kind of keep everything else running and buff the pH and get everything kind of regulated. But that's where that's kind of my goals for the system. I want to be able to do 1 meal a day. That's my goal. If I can do 1 meal a day, I justify the cost of this system. If I can eventually expand this system even further, I eventually want to go completely self-sustainable. But the only way I'm really going to be able to do that easily is probably with outside systems, because those cost nothing to run. The cost of running this pump costs me nothing a month. And look at what it produces. That one lettuce right there covers the cost of this as far as I'm concerned. So, that's my update for the day. So, thank you.